Have you ever wondered why some people instantly capture attention in a conversation, while others sound plain and forgettable? The secret lies in the words they choose. Subtle, vivid expressions not only help convey opinions with confidence, but also make interactions more engaging and professional. In this journey, you'll discover 60 powerful English phrases, each carrying a fascinating story behind it. These phrases will transform the way you communicate, adding nuance, clarity, and charm. So, are you ready to unlock the hidden tools that can take your English conversations to the next level? Idea 1. Expressing opinions with confidence and nuance. When it comes to conversations, whether in professional meetings, casual chats with friends, or even academic discussions, one of the most important skills is expressing your opinion clearly without sounding too blunt or repetitive. Too often, English learners rely on the simple phrase, "I think." While there is nothing wrong with it, overusing it makes your speech sound flat and predictable. Advanced English, however, gives you tools to make your point more dynamic, respectful, and impactful. One powerful alternative is the phrase, "from where I stand." This expression doesn't just show your personal opinion, it frames it as one perspective among many. It signals respect for other viewpoints while confidently stating your own. Imagine you are in a business meeting and the manager suggests launching a product quickly. You might say, "From where I stand, the timeline seems too optimistic given the current market conditions." Notice how this sounds more thoughtful and diplomatic than simply saying, "I think it's too fast." By using this phrase, you invite discussion instead of shutting it down. Another versatile option is "my 2 cents on this is." This idiom comes from the idea of offering a small but sincere contribution, like giving 2 pennies to a cause. It adds humility to your statement, showing that you don't claim to have all the answers, but you are willing to share your perspective. For example, if a friend is unsure about changing careers, you could say, "My 2 cents on this is that you should follow your passion, even if it feels risky." This phrase balances confidence with humility, making your opinion easier for others to accept. Sometimes conversations involve complex questions that don't have quick answers. In these moments, advanced speakers use expressions that show careful thought. For instance, you could say, "I hadn't given that much thought," instead of sounding unprepared. This phrase conveys honesty and seriousness. It lets the other person know you respect the question and are willing to reflect more deeply. If your professor asks, "Have you considered the long-term effects of this solution?" you could reply, "I hadn't given that much thought, but I'll look into it further." This response demonstrates maturity and professionalism. Another useful phrase is, "That's a tough one to unpack." Life is full of complicated issues, and this idiom shows that you recognize the layers of a problem. For example, if a friend asks, "What's the best way to handle a toxic workplace?" you might respond, "That's a tough one to unpack because there are so many factors involved." This not only acknowledges the difficulty of the situation, but also creates space for a deeper, more meaningful discussion. Finally, when you want to describe your current struggles in a humble but resilient way, you can use the phrase, "It's a lot to contend with." The word contend suggests effort and persistent. Idea 2, agreeing and disagreeing effectively. In the first part, we explored how to express your opinions with confidence using phrases like, "from where I stand," or "my 2 cents on this is." But conversations are never one-sided. Once you've shared your perspective, the natural next step is responding to others, agreeing, disagreeing, or adding nuance. And here is where many English learners struggle. Too often, they rely on the plain, "I agree," or the blunt, "I disagree." These responses, while clear, don't capture the richness of natural English conversations. Advanced speakers know how to express alignment or disagreement in ways that feel both professional and engaging. Let's begin with agreeing strongly. Instead of saying, "I agree," imagine telling your colleague, "That's spot on." The phrase comes from archery, where a perfect shot hits the very center of the target. When you say, "That's spot on," you're not just agreeing, you're emphasizing that their idea is perfectly accurate. For example, your project manager says, "We need to improve user experience because that's where we're losing customers." You can reply, "That's spot on. The data clearly supports that." Notice how much more enthusiastic and convincing this sounds compared to a flat, "I agree." Another way to show strong alignment is by saying, "You took the words right out of my mouth." This phrase highlights that you and the other person were thinking exactly the same thing at the same time. Imagine a colleague suggests holding weekly brainstorming sessions. Instead of a plain agreement, you smile and say, You took the words right out of my mouth. I was just about to suggest the same thing. Suddenly, the conversation feels more collaborative, as if you're on the same wavelength. Now let's look at the middle ground, agreeing but with reservations. If someone presents a convincing argument that finalizes your decision, you might say, "That pretty much seals the deal for me." This idiom comes from the business world, where a contract was sealed with wax to make it official. For example, a salesperson shows you a car that includes an unlimited mileage warranty. You might reply, "The price is good, but honestly, that warranty pretty much seals the deal for me." This phrase shows that you're not just agreeing, you're signaling commitment. Of course, there are times when you need to disagree. But how do you do this without sounding rude? One powerful phrase is, "I hear you, but I'm inclined to disagree." This acknowledges the other person's view while making space for your own. Imagine your friend says, "The new movie was fantastic." You can respond, "I hear you, but I'm inclined to disagree. The plot felt a bit predictable to me." This approach is polite yet clear, showing that you respect their opinion even while stating your own. Another soft disagreement is, "I'm not entirely sold on that idea." The phrase paints the image of a salesperson failing to fully convince a customer. And Idea 3. Steering the flow of conversations with grace. So far, we've learned how to share opinions confidently and how to agree or disagree with style. But conversation is not just about exchanging opinions, it's about managing the direction of dialogue. Think of a discussion as a river. Sometimes it flows naturally, sometimes it gets stuck, and sometimes it drifts too far off course. Advanced English speakers know how to gently steer that flow without sounding controlling or abrupt. This is where a set of powerful phrases becomes your secret tool. Imagine you're in a team meeting. After a long debate about budgets, you realize it's time to discuss the upcoming presentation. Instead of bluntly saying, "Let's change the subject," you can use the graceful phrase, "to pivot to another topic." The word pivot comes from basketball, where a player keeps one foot in place and turns to change direction smoothly. By saying, "To pivot to another topic, let's look at the presentation slides," you shift focus naturally without disrupting the flow of conversation. But what if you need to circle back to something important that was mentioned earlier? Advanced speakers use the phrase, "Going back to what you said earlier." This not only shows you were listening attentively, but also highlights that you value the other person's input. For example, in a strategy meeting, you could say, "Going back to what you said earlier about the product launch, what risks should we prepare for?" Suddenly, you sound like a leader who respects contributions while keeping the discussion focused. Now, sometimes conversations move quickly, and you need to politely interrupt. Instead of cutting in with a sharp "wait" or "hold on," you can say, "If I may, just interject for a moment." The word interject means to insert a short comment. Adding "if I may" softens it, making it sound respectful, even in a formal debate. For example, "If I may just interject for a moment, I think we're missing an important detail about the timeline." This phrase keeps the conversation professional while allowing you to make your point. There are also times when questions or comments carry hidden weight, complex issues that aren't easy to answer on the spot. Here you can use, "That's a loaded question." The phrase originally comes from the image of a loaded gun, something prepared and ready to fire. In conversation, it suggests that the question is layered, tricky, or politically sensitive. If a colleague asks, "So what do you really think about the office restructure?" you could reply, "That's a loaded question. There's a lot to unpack." Notice how this acknowledges complexity without shutting down the dialogue. And of course, sometimes conversations involve requests. When you want to say yes in a friendly and confident way, try, "Consider it done." For instance, if a teammate asks, "Could you send me the updated file today?" you could respond with a smile, "Consider it done." This tiny phrase. Idea 500. Building connection through empathy and professional responses. In Idea 3, we explored how to steer the direction of a conversation smoothly, how to pivot, revisit, or even interject politely. But controlling the flow is only half the story. The deeper art of communication lies in connection, how you make the other person feel heard, respected, and supported. That is where empathy and professionalism step in, turning conversations into meaningful exchanges rather than mechanical dialogues. Let's start with empathy. Imagine a colleague confides in you saying, "I'm overwhelmed with all these new responsibilities." A simple "I understand" may sound cold or robotic. Instead, use the powerful phrase, "I hear you loud and clear," borrowed from radio communication. This expression tells the other person their message has come through fully, without distortion, without misunderstanding. Saying, "I hear you loud and clear," that sounds really stressful, validates their feelings while keeping the tone professional. Sometimes empathy isn't just about acknowledgement, but about offering support. A short but deeply comforting phrase is, "I'm here for you." When a teammate struggles with personal or professional issues, acting saying, "I'm here for you if you need anything," acting communicates solidarity. It doesn't solve their problem acting, but it makes them feel less alone in conversations. That emotional connection is often more powerful than offering solutions. But what if you want to talk about your own struggles in a way that is honest, yet professional, instead of the usual "I'm fine" or "I'm okay"? Try "I'm holding my own." This phrase paints a picture of someone staying upright in the middle of a challenge. For example, if a friend asks, "How's the new job?" you can say, "It's demanding, but I'm holding my own." It's authentic, it acknowledges difficulty while showing resilience, acting. Empathy also includes recognizing the value of someone else's input. When you don't fully agree but want to show respect, you might say, "There's something to be said for that." For instance, if a colleague suggests trusting instincts over data, you could respond, "There's something to be said for that." Intuition does play a role in decision-making, acting. This phrase softens disagreement, highlighting open-mindedness and respect, acting. And when you want to formally acknowledge help, nothing beats "Your help has been invaluable." Notice the nuance. Invaluable doesn't mean without value. It means so valuable it can't be measured. Instead of a quick "thanks a lot," you can say, "Your help on the data analysis has been invaluable. We couldn't have done it without you," acting. It turns gratitude into a professional compliment that strengthens relationships, acting. Now let's connect this back to idea 3.3. While steering conversations gave you the ability to guide direction, acting, showing empathy and professionalism gives you the ability to deepen relationships, acting. Using phrases like "I hear you loud and clear," "I'm here for you." Idea 5, making decisions and managing discussions like a professional. In idea 4, we discovered how empathy and professionalism help you connect with others on a human level. But connection alone is not enough, especially in professional or academic environments. At some point, every conversation needs clarity, decisions, or direction. That's where advanced English phrases for decision-making and negotiation come into play. These expressions allow you to handle complex situations with confidence, whether you're confirming a plan, postponing a topic, or leaving space to think things through. One of the most common needs in conversations is buying time to think. Instead of a hesitant, "I don't know," you can use the professional phrase, "I need to think that one through." Imagine your professor asks you a difficult question during a presentation. Instead of panicking, you calmly reply, "That's a great question. I need to think that one through and get back to you." This shows respect for the question and seriousness in your response. Another useful phrase when you're not ready to decide immediately is, "I'll sleep on it." This idiom suggests that reflection overnight leads to clearer judgment. If a friend invites you to join a new business venture, you might respond, "It sounds promising, but I'll sleep on it before I give you an answer." Unlike a blunt delay, this phrase sounds thoughtful and wise. Of course, sometimes the issue is not whether you need time, it's that the timing isn't right for the conversation itself. In those cases, use, "Let's table that for now." The word "table" here comes from parliamentary procedure, meaning to postpone discussion. Imagine a heated meeting where someone brings up budget issues. You might say, "That's important, but let's table that for now and focus on today's agenda." This phrase keeps you in control without dismissing the idea. On the flip side, there are moments when you want to revisit a topic later. That's when "let's circle back to that" comes in. It's a polite way of saying, "We'll return to this point." For example, "We're short on time today, but let's circle back to that in our next meeting." Notice how professional and organized this sounds compared to a vague, "We'll talk later." In professional settings, you'll often need to check alignment and seek confirmation. A polished alternative to "Is that okay?" is, "Does that work for you?" For instance, "We're planning to present the project at 2 p.m. Does that work for you?" It communicates respect, making the other person feel involved in the decision. Sometimes you'll also need to acknowledge complexity and postpone sensitive discussions. In these moments, you can say, "That's a discussion for another time." This doesn't dismiss the issue, but gently places it where it belongs, later. For example, "That's an important point, but given our agenda, that's a discussion for another time." It's professional, polite, and effective. And finally,